You're listening to the TEFL Commute podcast, episode 2, Stationery.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the TEFL Commute, a podcast for language teachers, which isn't about language teaching, although this topic will inevitably come up. My name's Lindsay Clanfield.
That certainly sounds like a very convoluted intro, Lindsay. Hi, my name's Shaun Wilden, and welcome back. And what are we talking about today, Lindsay?
Well, today I thought we'd talk about a topic that is not often talked about, but I think is near and dear to many teachers' hearts. And that's the topic of stationery.
And stationery meaning the not moving, or...
Oh, you're begging for a word nerd thing happening here. No, I mean stationery as in pens, paper, paper clips, hole punchers, notebooks, all of that kind of stuff that you have, that I think people develop like a love for it when they're at school, and teachers, of course, kind of end up going to school for their whole lives. So you always have a pencil case. You know, I in fact recently discovered, Shaun, when I went back to my parents' house in Toronto, I found my old pencil case, and I've now brought it back. And it's a bit small, but I'm looking forward to reusing.
Can you fit your current stationery, your iPad and your?
Obviously, no. What does iPad and all that count as stationery? I don't know. I mean, obviously there are like stationery type apps that you can have, but it fits a good amount of pens and a little tiny stapler and stuff like that.
It's interesting because when obviously getting ready for this conversation, I actually downloaded a book on my Kindle called Adventures in Stationery, A Journey Through Your Pencil Case. And this guy, James Ward, actually wrote a book based on that kind of premise. He got his old school pencil case, and he was going through the things in it and started looking at the history of where everything came from. It's a very fascinating read.
Yeah. Oh no, that sounds amazing. I mean, the one thing about my old pencil case that I found is that, you know, I found also this one time when this other kid, Jonathan, like used to bully me, and I remember he wrote something on the inside of my pencil case. And so finding that, I was sort of, you know, it brought back a few bad memories, but I determined to battle on and just like continue on with the pencil case. If any of you see me at a conference, you can ask me if I have it. I'll try to remember to carry it with me.
So for the next year, you're now going to have to carry a pencil case. Oh, can you imagine the hassle of getting that through customs?
Oh,
the scissors and stapler and...
Yeah, the security thing. Yeah, that wouldn't be that good. Oh. Yeah, maybe I won't be carrying this around. Maybe I'm just going to live on a shelf with all the other things that I bring back from my parents.
Maybe just take a photo of it.
Yes, exactly. Well, actually, maybe we should. Maybe I'll take a photo and we can put it on the website.
I'll put it on the blog, yeah. So what is your favorite piece of stationery?
What is my favorite piece of stationery? Well, does a pencil case, because I think my little leather pencil case is one of my favorite pieces. Although in more traditional stationery sense, I'm very partial to like a good ballpoint pen. I've had various ones. When I say good, I don't mean like super expensive Mont Blanc type pens. And I have something to say about those later. I don't mean those. I've never had one of those. I think it'd be crazy to spend $1,000 on a pen.
Yeah, ballpoint pens. For some reason, I always assumed they were invented by Biro, but they weren't, were they? You're going to tell us about that in a bit, I guess.
You've set me up.
Oh, no.
I've got my notes on all the stuff you need to know about the history of the ballpoint pen. Being the coursebook writer nerd that I am, I ended up researching a longer story. In fact, it was because one of our listeners said about our first episode that it was nice, but we didn't have any longer stories. So I have the long piece ready to go on the pen. Also in this episode, Shaun will be sending someone from ELT away to their desert island. But first, let's hear from some teachers talk about their favorite bits of stationery.
what's your favourite piece of stationery and why?
My favourite piece of stationery is an erasable pen because I think it's magic. It's much nicer than writing with a pencil, but it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make because you can rub it all out afterwards. And they come in all kinds of different colours as well. More colours the better.
My favourite piece of stationery would be paperclips, so that I can keep all my notes and my lesson plans together.
My favourite piece of stationery is my hole puncher because it's bright green and it's a really big heavy piece of equipment and it goes thunk.
So my favourite piece of stationery was a pen and pencil in one, where if you turn it one way it's a pen and if you turn it the other way it's a clickable pencil. But unfortunately the other day I lent it to someone and then they never came back with it.
Favourite piece of stationery is my pen that I can use as a pointer when I'm giving a presentation, but unfortunately the batteries run out of it, so I'm going to have to use this little stress ball thing instead.
Highlighters, because I like having my notes in a colourful way and I like highlighting and underlining things. It helps me remember better.
I really don't have a favourite piece of stationery other than my pen, because I don't really carry much.
Favorite piece of stationery is notebooks, because I like the design of the covers and all the nice clean new papers to fill up.
The biro. Was Biro the original inventor of the ballpoint pen? Okay, this is kind of a whole bunch of like sources that I've been checking. I'd like to say I checked exhaustively and fact-checked and, purchased several books on the history of the pen, but I didn't. I did go a little bit further than Wikipedia, though. So here's what I've got. Of course, you know that before the ballpoint pen, people used these fountain pens, right? Do you have any fountain pens, Shaun?
I used to have. I very rarely with a pen these days. I just use my phone.
All right. Well, I always hated fountain pens. I'm sure anyone who's had cheap or nasty fountain pens has experienced the same problems.
Ink everywhere, yeah?
Exactly. Well, there were three main problems with fountain pens before the arrival of the ballpoint pen. One was that the ink, that used to be filled with a watery ink called India ink. And this kind of fed through the pen, I'm reading now, using capillary action. Google it, people, if you don't know what that is. I didn't. But anyway, that's how it went through the pen. But the ink flows unevenly on many of these pens. The ink is also slow to dry. So if you've ever done stuff writing with a fountain pen, it's very easy to smudge the paper, just by hitting it with the edge of your hand, the ink smudges. So it doesn't dry quickly. But sometimes it accidentally dries in the pen, and that gums the whole pen up, which means the pen needed to be meticulously cleaned, or you just had to kind of throw away the top or the nib or the thing and kind of replace it again. I haven't had a fountain pen for ages, but I remember some of those problems.
I certainly remember them from at school, when I think that's the last time I used one, covered in it. It was horrible stuff.
So the first patent, though, for a different kind of pen, a ballpoint pen, is in 1880 to a guy called John J. Loud. So one could argue that he was the inventor of the ballpoint pen. In fact, the patent records would show. However, his invention didn't really take off. He was more interested in a pen that would write on leather, and there wasn't a lot of call for other writing on leather in that style. So it isn't until the late 1920s, early 1930s that all of a sudden a newspaper editor from Hungary, frustrated by filling up fountain pens and cleaning smudged pages, created a new pen that combined a different kind of ink with a ball socket mechanism. All right, and that's Laszlo Biro in Hungary. So yes, he was the inventor of the more recognized one, but he didn't file the first patent. He filed his patent in 1938 and was living in Germany at the time. But then during the war, they left Germany, him and his brother, and moved to Argentina, where they formed a company, Biro Pens of Argentina. So make the pen, file a patent, and then, got to get out of there. War is coming. They go to Argentina. Their pen is sold in Argentina under the name Birome or Birome. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but people, according to a couple of sources, people in Argentina still call these kind of pens Biromes or Biromes. Maybe we can get some feedback on that on the Facebook page or on our blog. Anyway, the next chapter in the story of the ballpoint pen is that it's getting widely used in Argentina, and some British people find out about it there. And it gets the attention of the RAF, the Royal Air Force, which had been experimenting with fountain pens in planes, but they were finding as the plane, in RAF planes, people, whatever, writing on maps or things like that, in fountain pens, the pen would explode or the ink would flow or it made such a huge mess. So they became the first ones to order large amounts of ballpoint pens to be used in RAF planes. What do you think?
That kind of reminds me of the story of the space pen. Like NASA spent millions trying to do a pen.
I also read that apparently that's a bit of an urban myth, that NASA spent millions trying to make a space pen, although there was a pen company spent a lot of money trying to make a space pen, but they had never been asked to do it by NASA. So I think they partly spread that thing. But again, this whole idea of like the kind of pen that you could write in high altitude or in zero gravity kind of thing.
But isn't the answer to that use a pencil?
Exactly. Well, that's what I thought. I was like, if you're an RAF guy and you're flying over Germany, it's World War II and everything, and the ink's going everywhere, I'd just be screaming, "Give me a pencil! Get rid of this! Just use a pencil." Of course, the pencils in space. They didn't. The NASA had pencils in space, but then they got worried that like if a little bit chipped off in the zero gravity, it would just fly around. It could fly into someone's eye, and there were also apparently fears that little bits of pencil would create a fire in a spacecraft. So pencils were. They designed special kind of space pencils, which I couldn't find any pictures of, and then used other ballpoint pens. So my story is only halfway there for the people who wanted longer stories. The story of the pen continues because these original pens sold to the military, to the RAF, were really expensive. But the public sold pens were also quite expensive. And in the United States, another company started making them called Reynolds. Their pens cost $10 each. And they were marketed as the first pen to write underwater, upside down, etc. And they were called like they were so expensive because they were deemed new technology. And the first person to make pens really cheap is this French guy called Marcel Biche in 1945. And he kind of bought this factory to make these pens, which he designed like the Bic pen. You know the design of the Bic pen, the clear glass and the blue cap, which is actually in the Smithsonian Museum as a landmark in design. He was the guy who designed those pens, and he managed to he called the pens Bic after his name, B-I-C-H, but just B-I-C was the pen. And he started flooding the American market with these super cheap pens. And his marketing line was writes well the first time, every time, I think. I'll need to check that again. So there you go. From the very early beginnings, from the fountain pen to John J. Loud to Laszlo Biro to Reynolds and the expensive pens in the States to finally the Bic pens. And that's my little potted history of the pen.
Well, you obviously did a little bit of research there, Lindsay.
I'm exhausted.
What strikes me is kind of the same thing that I found when I was kind of looking at stationery is how many patent battles there are in stationery. You never realize that such little, I guess, things that we take for granted have so many different people with patents for them. I mean, you've got the pens there. And I would, things from paper clips through to, liquid paper, that kind of Tipex. I don't know what you would call it. They've all been the subject of patent battles, and it's.
Are any of these things like the accidental discoveries? Like the Post-it notes, which is apparently was like glue that didn't work, and it could only like the guy who invented the Post-it note was by accident. He was trying to make like a kind of a super glue but it really wasn't super. It was really kind of just bad.
It's obviously quite bad for a super glue.
Then he realized, like, hey, I can stick this paper and take it off and stick it somewhere else and take it off. And then that was the invention. I don't know if that's just an urban myth. Were any of these patents that you found things that were supposed to be for something else and then...
Well, I don't know if it's by accident, but the woman that first used liquid paper, the correction in America, she got the idea from watching a painter. She realized that what they used to clean their brushes and etc. would be exactly what she needed for correcting mistakes in typing, because you couldn't obviously erase it. You had to go over the actual typing. So that, I guess that's that kind of thing.
It's interesting also that all these stationery things actually get their names. I'm sure there's a lexical word for this, but like the Bic pen is named after the person. So you call it, like, you can call it a Bic or you can call it a biro, but that's kind of named after a person as well. Scotch, as in Scotch tape. Tipex is like the company name, isn't it? That makes the liquid white stuff. These all seem to be given names after the companies that make them. Now it's time to join Shaun as we go to TEFL Commute's Desert Island.
Welcome to the Desert Island. Yes, you heard that right, Desert Island. A section lovingly named after all the students who've had trouble sorting out their puddings from their sand. Loosely based on an idea that the BBC had some years ago, we interview a person in ELT about things they would take with them if they suddenly had to go and teach on a remote island. And of course, we also find out what dessert they take with them to eat. In this episode, I talked to Sinead Laffan, a teacher trainer based in Prague. Sinead is also the coordinator of the TEFL Teacher Development Special Interest Group. How you doing, Sinead?
Not too bad, Shaun, and yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. How's Prague today?
It's grand, actually. I've just spent a little bit of the afternoon sitting down on the Plavka by the river. The sun's been shining, and it's coming into its own.
I'm going to take you away from the river and the lovely sight of the castle and everything, and drop you in the middle of a desert island. Despite the fact that it's a desert island, there are a group of students ready to be taught, and you're armed with 3 things which hopefully will better their English. So Sinead, your first thing is a methodology book.
So the first one is Sound Foundations, Adrian Underhill's Sound Foundations. Just because I think it's got obviously, it's a wonderful book for teaching students, and I think teachers as well, to understand what's going on in their mouth and, what's going on in terms of creating those sounds and sort of the physicality of phonology. But also for me, I just think it's got the potential for so much laughter. All of those discovery exercises. I just find myself giggling consistently, and getting students to do them is something that we have great fun with. So I can see that whiling away the hours on a desert island.
So it's a book to amuse yourself and hopefully teach the students something.
And then the other one that's on my short list is Scott Thornbury's How to Teach Speaking, which is one of those books that I just feel like I can dip into at any point and go, oh wow, I haven't done that in ages, or I haven't done that. And there's so many different kinds of speaking activities and sort of different structures in there, that I feel like that's one that I could make great use of on a desert island. Push comes to shove, for comedy value, I think we're going to have to go with Adrian Underhill.
So that's the methodology book chosen. What about a resource book?
Super. Okay, so well, I when I started listing things for myself, Teaching Unplugged came up pretty quickly. Scott Thornbury and Luke Medding's Teaching Unplugged, because again, it's one of those books that I just consistently come back to. It's a great, Monday morning, what am I going to do? Open it randomly. That'll do fantastic. And not just for what's on the page, but for what it kind of sparks, the directions it sends you, and the potential other activities that come out of that book, and yeah, so that's definitely one that's on the list.
You're allowed to take one other thing to help you with your teaching, so what would that be?
That other thing yeah, a lot of thinking on this one, and I'm gonna take a mini whiteboard and a whiteboard marker if I'm allowed to have those two things as one. Um, it's going to be a whiteboard because I just love the potential for drawing, and I'm a whiteboard junkie. I've never been into interactive whiteboards. I like my tech, but it's the one place I keep coming back to is the layout of a whiteboard and the ability to draw and for students to interact with it. So, as great and all as the sand is going to be,
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got the sand. You could draw your pictures in the sand.
yeah, I don't know. Give me a whiteboard and a pen. You know, there's a certain finesse you can get on a whiteboard that you're just not going to get in the sand. I feel.
Well, since you said mini whiteboard, but we'll let you take that.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing. As you know, we called this segment Desert Island Disc. You've taught Czech students like me, and they always confuse dessert and desert. So, being this is a desert island, what dessert would you want to have while there?
Super. Well, time of year that's in it, I found myself for the first time in years eating rhubarb. And it's taken me back to this really nostalgic place in my childhood and my father's vegetable patch. And so I'm going to take with me a lifetime supply of rhubarb crumble.
So with that pleasant thought to end on, Sinead, off you go. Go teach your lesson with your mini whiteboard, your sound foundations, and your teaching unplugged. And don't give away all your crumble as rewards for good work to students.
I definitely will not, Shaun.
Thanks, Sinead.
Thanks, Emil. Bye.
Do you remember with paperclips? Do you remember on Microsoft the name of the thing that popped up that you need to see help?
Oh yeah, that annoying little paper. Was it replaced by a dog?
I don't know. But do you know what it was called?
Clippy.
Clippy, very good. Well, you know, Clippy was got rid of in 2007. However, he's back this year, and he's starring in his own pornographic novels.
No way.
Yeah, there's a new novel called Conquered by Clippy.
But it's not the same Clippy.
Well, it is. I'll give you the link. I don't think there's a link we might want to share with our students, but I'll give you a link to the article about it on the website.
Conquered by Clippy, the porn novel about a Microsoft icon imitating a piece of stationery.
And the cover of the book is the clip with a scantily clad woman. But I think there is a crossover between stationery.
Get us the author of that book on our podcast. We want to know that his or her favorite piece of stationery.
But it's amazing. I mean, not that it's kind of, I guess it's clear your Google search, but looking up stationery, you also find on BuzzFeed things like borderline erotic for photos for people who love stationery, and the little teasing shots of stationery boxes.
But you can, tell me that opening a moleskin notepad, with that little clip, that there isn't something that little bit of elastic when you open a moleskin notepad or something that's really nice. What are those really nice paper craft? What are they called? The notepads.
I know what you mean with the moleskin. I've got a moleskin, even though I don't use paper that much because I tend to write on my tablets. I've still got a lovely moleskin, a Star Wars moleskin, which
tell me that opening one of those
it's lovely,
a sensual act itself. So I can completely understand stationery porn, and might be nice if anybody in our of our listeners wants to send us some photos of stationery porn.
Where's he going with this?
Well, no, but seriously, like a nice photo of a pen, not with human bits in there, just nice photos of pens and paper clips and things like that.
I guess you agree. The ex-lead singer of the Smiths, Morrissey, he's one of his quotes from that time in the 80s when he was in the Smiths. He says, "For me, going into Ryman's, which is a well-known UK stationery shop, is the most extreme sexual experience one could have."
Really? You know who does great stationery shops is Germany. If you are ever in Germany and get to go to a stationery shop, it's amazing. It's awesome. They have all this stuff that they just do it really nicely, and tons of different kinds of paper and everything. I never end up buying that much in there because I can never really decide. And also, I have too many notepads already that are just unopened, and I just kind of have them there. I feel sort of weird about writing in some of these notepads. I don't know why. They just seem too nice to. You can't just write a grocery list in some of these notepads. You need to, I don't know, be jotting down ideas for your next great novel or something. Anyway,
Kids.
there you go. Okay.
So that's our episode done. Thank you for listening to TEFL Commute, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
As your commute is coming to an end, here's an idea you can take into class right now. This episode we've been talking about stationery, so grab a paperclip on your way into the classroom. Hold up the paperclip and tell the students that one way often used to test creativity and divergent thinking is by asking people to come up with different ways to use a paperclip. For example, bending it to make a hook. Put the students into small groups and ask them to come up with as many ways as they can think of. Set a time limit. If your students need more motivation, then tell them that most people come up with an average of 15 ideas, while someone who can get 200 or more is most likely to be a genius. After allowing time for the groups to come up with ideas, let each group share, and perhaps they can compare to the numerous lists of ideas found online. Check out our website for links. You've been listening to the TEFL Commute, an original podcast by Lindsay Clanfield, Shaun Wilden and James Taylor. Visit us at www.teflcommute.com.